Good morning, everyone. My name is Juanita, and I'm a very grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon. It's funny, my daughter texted me last night, and she said, Tim, her husband, he says, you're getting all these messages about a happy birthday on Facebook. And I said to him, oh yeah, those are my mom's groupies. You know, they want to make sure that they get it in before anybody else. And I laughed and I said, those are my gals, my friends in Australia. It's already today. So, and I said, she said, well, what are you going to do for your birthday? I don't know where this came from. I said, oh, well, I guess there'll be a few people that might sing happy birthday to me tomorrow. So there you are. For my 50th birthday, some of the gals I sponsored wanted to have a party. And they said, we're going to do this at your house because you have a big house, and we just want to celebrate your birthday. And I was like, oh, God, why? But I let them do it. And I let them do it because I knew how much they loved me. And I'd been sponsoring this other woman for some time, and she was at the party, and she says, how could you do this? How could you just let them have this party? She says, I know you. I know how hard this is for you to be in that spotlight, to have the attention. And I said, I'm doing it only for one reason. That's because they love them. That's because they love me. And so to have you guys sing happy birthday and to not shut down, for me, is a big deal. Because what I learned was, don't let the feelings in. And one of the biggest things I've had to learn while I'm in Al-Anon was to break down the barriers. Okay, I don't break down the barriers. I allow God to break down the barriers that I build up because I've got my defenses up. You know, I'm so afraid that I'm going to be hurt, and I've been so afraid to be hurt since I was a child that I've built these walls up between you and me, between God and myself. And so to be able to let those walls in and really listen to you, help me celebrate today, and to listen to your singing and feel it, that's a big deal. And I had the tears just right there. And I don't say that for a fact. I say that because that's really, really true. So I was meditating this morning and sitting, and I said, okay, God, what do you want me to say to everybody? You know, because I really think that God has an idea of what he wants me to say to you. And I had a few little thoughts, but nothing that I thought really came from God. And then I just sat there for a little while longer, and what came was, just trust me. And my next thought was, really? That's all? That's it? Don't you know how much I hate when I've got to trust you? And this is what you want from me? And then of course I laughed, you know, to myself, because isn't that what I'm always asked to do? To just trust God. But really what came to me also was, God just wants me to talk to you about love, because this is what this is all about. And it's the hardest thing in the world for me to open up my heart. It's easy for me to love you. I have no problem with loving you. But to open myself up and feel the love that you all have to offer, to me, that is petrifying. Petrifying. It feels so big, so huge, so overwhelming that I really want to just pull the covers over my head and just shut the door. So to be here today and be with you and ask God to keep my heart open, to open my mind and to open my spirit, so that I may be a part of carrying a message today is a big deal, and to not shut the door. And I'm going to tell you how big this is for me. About 12, 13 years ago, I was in Maine at a conference, and my sponsor was living there at that point. And after the whole weekend was over, and it was Sunday afternoon, and we were at my sponsor's house, and she had a couple of people at her house who she'd known for forever, and I'd known for forever. And we were just sitting there chatting, and just really, it was mellow, it was quiet. And all of a sudden, this woman, Jackie, said to me, she said, you know, it's really funny. I've known you for years. I've known you for years. And today's the first time that I've ever felt like you've let me in, and I've gotten to see you, and I'm getting to know you. And my first thought was, boy, do you ever have me wrong? Where have you been? And I wasn't very happy about her remark, because I took offense to it. And because I thought, well, she's implying that I'm really closed off, which I'm not. Right? And so that night before going to bed, I sat and I thought, boy, was she right? And I had the opportunity sometime afterwards to say to Jackie, Jackie, I really have to tell you how important that was, because you really opened the door for me to take a look at something that I thought I'd move beyond it. And I had. And that's what happens to me here, is that time passes and I've moved beyond where I was, but I really hope and I know that God's not done with me, and He's going to move me through some more stuff so I can be more open and more receptive and more present and more God conscious. And isn't that what I desire? And I never knew that that was going to be a gift when I got into the rooms of Al-Anon. July 2nd, 1986, I walked into my very first meeting of Al-Anon. I had taken my husband to the treatment center about 2.5 weeks before, and as we sat there for intake, they said to me, you have to go to Al-Anon. They said, in fact, you have to go to at least 3, 4 meetings, I can't remember, of Al-Anon, or we're not going to let him out of here. And I thought, well, I've been trying to get rid of this SOB for quite some time. You've just made it very easy. Thank you very much. And then I went to my first family day. And at this first family day, the counselors there asked me if I'd gone to an Al-Anon meeting. And I said, no, I haven't had a chance. The truth is, I tried to go, and I drove by the place where there was a meeting, and I saw these people going down these steps into what appeared to be a very dark doorway in a very dark room beyond there. And I thought, I ain't going down there, man. I ain't like those people, you know? And so I drove around and went back to work. And I knew I had another family day coming, and Tom had given me a couple of calls during this time, and he asked me if I'd gone to an Al-Anon meeting, and I said, no, I haven't yet. And he said, you heard, he fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. You'd have thought that he'd invented it. He thought he was like Bill Wilson or Dr. Bob, you know. He was just like so gung-ho about it all. And my thought was, man, if he's telling me to do something, that's the last thing I want to do, you know, right? I didn't want to go to my second family day and have them ask me if I'd gone to an Al-Anon meeting and say, no, I haven't. Because I wanted to show up at this second family day looking like the kind, caring, loving wife that I really was not. It's all about image, baby. And, you know, I just really wanted them to know that whatever was going on in our family, and his drinking was not my fault. I didn't do it. I didn't realize how true that was at the time, but I was like, I felt responsible. So I wanted to look like the kind, caring, loving wife that I really wasn't. So I went to this first Al-Anon meeting, and I sat there, and I just knew these folks couldn't help me. You know, they were housewives, and you know, old hippies and professional people, and I knew none of them had lived the life that I had been living. So I really didn't expect to hear anything, and as the meeting was going on, I was even more positive of it because they weren't talking about much of anything that was really important. A couple of people talked about God, and I wanted to crawl under the table and say, "You poor, pathetic losers." And finally, it was about the end of the meeting, and the woman asked, "How do you get your husband into the treatment center?" And I thought, that is finally the question that they should have been talking about this whole time. It goes to show how much I was listening and how much what I expected. And nobody answered this poor woman, so I promptly raised my hand, and Al-Anon made its first mistake, and they called on me. And I proceeded to tell this poor woman and everybody in the meeting how to get whoever into treatment, because I really thought I had done it. You know, that's how deluded I was about my life. A month and a half earlier, I'd woken up from a dream, and in this dream, there was a guy trying to climb out of a very deep gutter. And he was dirty, scraggly hair, and I realized this was Tom. And I thought, oh my God, this is who you're married to. And my next thought, and if he's trying to climb out of a gutter and can't do it, what does it say about you? And I lay in bed after this dream, and I thought, what am I going to say to him? I've got to have that talk with him. And my thought was, you've had so many talks, what's going to be different this time? And I said, I guess, God, you're going to have to give me the words. Give me the words. If I talk to him, give me the words. And I'm praying to a God that I'm trying to not believe in. I'm praying to God that I'm scared of. I'm praying to a God that is like I'm denying on a consistent basis. And we had the conversation, and he ends up going into treatment. And, you know, I thought I'd done it. Of course, we all know he was as sick and tired of this whole thing as I was sick and tired. I just thought that I'd done it. So as I finished telling the whole meeting how to get their husband into treatment, they all said, "Thank you for sharing. Keep coming back." And I thought, yes, I will keep coming back, because obviously you guys, I mean, you talk about crazy. Obviously you guys value my words of wisdom, and I will keep coming back, you know? I mean, it's just, that's how insane I was, that I didn't think much of myself, but I sure thought I knew everything. I thought I had all the answers. I didn't even know any of the questions to ask. I'd spent my life in denial. I'd spent my life, we say denial, it wasn't even denial. I'd spent my life lying to myself, deluded about my life, deluded about my relationships, deluded about myself. As much as I lied to you, as much as I lied to the world, the biggest lies I ever told were to myself. If you were to ask me what's the most important thing in your life, I would have said it's my children. It was never my children. It was always him. It was always him. He came first, always came first. My kids, sometimes they were second. Work typically was second, because I had to be responsible. I had to pay the bills. I was the one who was making all the sacrifices. That's how I saw it. You know, I want to tell a little story. I want to tell a little story about my journey in those first years before coming here. I grew up with a dad whose drinking really affected me and really affected my family, to the point, I believe, that when my brother was about 11, 12 years old, he began attempts to take his life. I don't think he realized, I mean, how could he, that by the time he was 28, he would be gone from this planet. Not through any attempt on his part, but the fact that he'd been ill for quite some time, most of his life. And when he was about 24, his kidneys quit working. When they discovered this, his kidneys were working at about 13%. So he had to begin to be on dialysis, and he was on dialysis the last several years of his life. And so by the time he was 28, he'd passed away. And there were several instances of him in his teenage years attempting suicide in various ways, and I really believe that it's this family thing of growing up with active alcoholism. And I was never the kind of family member who was suicidal. I was homicidal. And when you think about that, it's really sad, isn't it? It's really sad. I can tell you how much I love people in my life, but the fact that I think that homicide is a good idea, how horrible is that? That's horrible. Well, I was married and divorced by the time I was 21, had a daughter, a beautiful kid, met Tom about 3 years later. He had 2 boys. A year later, we had another child. So we had yours, mine, and ours. We had 2 boys and 2 daughters. And things were not pretty. Now, I don't think anybody, has this plan of like, let's have a horrible life together. Right? I mean, I met him, oh my God. I saw him at the back of a church. We were going to a wedding, a wedding that I had no intentions of going to. A friend talked me into going, and a friend talked him into going. So I saw him at the back of the church, and man, he looked good. He was in these little khaki pants and this Madras shirt, and he didn't look like any of the guys that I'd been hanging around with for a while. And so I saw him at the back of the church, and we ended up at the reception, and he's like across the banquet table, serving himself. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and I gave him the biggest smile I could possibly give him. And his eyes got this big. I mean, he was like a deer in the headlights. I think he got so scared. He's like, oh my God, who is this woman? And I went and sat next to him, and I found out all about him. I found out about the places he liked to hang out. Okay, I found out all about the bars that he was hanging out at. And so for the next couple of weeks, I would show up at these places. And finally, after about the 3rd or 4th time, he looked at me this evening, and he said, oh my God, I've known your cousins, we have similar friends. I've been in Santa Fe for, I don't know, 5, 6 years. He says, I've never met you. And then all of a sudden, since I met you at that wedding, you're always at these places that I come to. And I said, I know, crazy, isn't it? And he said, it must be fate. I said, it must be. I was a stalker. And he, so we ended up married, and we weren't even married, I don't think. And this is how this thing progressed in me, because I didn't. It wasn't like I didn't have any idea about living with an alcoholic. My dad, all these guys before I met Tom. Tom didn't do it quite the same way as every other guy I'd been with knew, and certainly it wasn't like my dad, And so I just thought this was going to be fun. This was exciting. This was like a good time. And after a few months of us living together, and I walked into the bathroom, he was a bathtub drinker, and he was fast asleep in the tub. Oh, poor man. He worked so hard. He really did, and this was winter time, you know, so he needs a bath to warm up. And you know, my first husband, I divorced him really because he didn't work. He had this little allergy to work, and so it's like Tom was a worker, you know. Tom was a worker, and so as far as I was concerned, he was a real keeper, you know. It's like we're making progress, man, you know. It's like we're doing it. And so I felt sorry for him, and so I let the water out of the tub, and I filled it back up a little bit, and, you know, not too high, not too hot, just right. And I left, and he came to bed at some point, and more time went on, and we have our daughter, and a couple of years go by, and we have an incident of violence where the police have to, my oldest daughter had to call the police and have them come and take him to jail for he'd beaten the living daylights out of me this evening. And the next day I go back home during my lunch hour, and he said to me, he said, I see what kind of animal drinking turns me into. He said, I will never drink again. I would never hurt you for any reason. He said, I'm so sorry. And I knew he meant it. I mean, I knew he meant it. I could just feel it from him. And I couldn't understand why that night he was drunk. I just didn't get it. You see, because I drank, I partied, I did all the deal that he did. And I could stop. I could quit. And I thought, if I can stop, if I can quit and not do this, why can't he? He must not love me. He must not care. And I had all this sense, these feelings of frustrations, these feelings of guilt that I'm not a good wife. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with us? I had to try harder. I had to figure it out. What was I going to do? So I started we'd go to restaurants, and I wouldn't order a drink when the waitress would ask for a drink, and I'd help him drink his. And I couldn't figure out why by the end of the evening he was drunk when I basically drank his drink. And I didn't realize until after he got sober that he was going to the men's room and stopping at the bar, going and coming. I had no idea. You know, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, in the doctor's opinion, says the alcoholic is in full flight from reality. Boy, if that's true for the alcoholic, what does that say about me? Because I'm trying hard and fast to grab hold of him and stay 10 steps ahead of him. And I'm failing miserably, failing miserably. So after a few years, I walk into the bathroom, and this time I know he's not asleep. I know he's passed out. And if I could have gotten the local ice plant to come and dump a load of ice in the tub, I would have done it. Because I really thought he was setting out to make my life miserable. So my goal, my mission in life began to be one of making him miserable. He was going to pay. He was going to pay for the misery that I thought he was actively causing in my life. A few more years go by. I leave him outside in the middle of a snowstorm, several inches of snow on the ground, lock the door, think tomorrow morning I'll be the little widow woman, and it's like, who'd know? He always made it in. And I didn't even give him a key to the house, so I have no idea how he managed it. He always came in, and to add insult to injury, he always would like scooch up to like warm up, you know? And I would pray to this God that I didn't believe in to take his life, to take his life. I knew he was having to drive home from Santa Fe to where we lived in Powaka, 16 miles, and I'd lost an uncle in a drunken car wreck, and there was this spot right across from the Santa Fe Opera that I knew worked in taking the lives of alcoholics. And he always made it in. So this God, he doesn't even listen to my prayers, you know? And I would kick him out, and I'd take him back, and I'd kick him out, and I'd take him back, and I'd kick him out, and I'd take him back. And the day came when he said to me, I see how miserable, Juana, I'm making you. I will leave. And I was like a little 2-year-old kid, and I say, you can't leave me. You can't go. You can't go. And I didn't know why he couldn't go. I just knew if he left, I would die, because it felt like that. That's why I always took him back. I felt like there was nothing of me. There was no me without him. My whole life, all my thoughts were about him. I'd go to work. I'd be home. I had 2 lives. When I was at work, I could pretend that I didn't have this life I had at home. And at home, it was like there was no running from it at all. I was in it. I was stuck. I was just stuck. I'd go to bed at night and I'd think, oh, I'm so glad this day's over. How did I survive it? Because that's really what I was doing. I was just surviving it. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd think, I can't do this one more day. I can't do this. And of course, we do. Those of us who love alcoholics, we do this. Because somewhere deep within us, as much as I told myself how much I hated him, how much I couldn't stand him, there was some little tiny speck of love that was still there. And it was so hidden, so hidden. I didn't know if it really existed. And the day came that I walked into the bathroom and I watched my hand slowly start to reach out, go over his head, because I had one thought and one thought only. Just get his head under that water. Get his head under that water. Because you always take him back and you can't let him go. If he's dead, you'll be done. About 6 months prior to this, he'd come home, he'd been to the doctor, and he said, boy, the doctor gave me some news today. He said, it's really not good, Juana. And I said, what is it? And he said to me that if I didn't quit drinking, I'd be dead in 6 months. I didn't say it out loud, but in here, I'm thinking, I've got those calendar pages flipping, and I'm thinking, man, can I hold out that long, you know? That's what this family thing does to me. It gets me to a place where I think pushing his head down under the water is a good idea, is a solution. Well, I had 2 thoughts as my hand was slowly headed out towards pushing him under the water. And the first thought was, remember that old TV show, Columbo? Columbo always figured out who did the crime. This little guy smoking a cigar with his little rumpled trench coat and his little hat, and he always figured it out. And I thought, there's going to be some cop in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This little Hispanic guy with his little cowboy hat, you know, and he's going to figure out who did it. And my next thought was, and then what happens to your kids? Dad's dead. Because my first husband, he wasn't there for my first daughter. He was out of the picture, baby. Tom was dad. Tom was dad. And who's going to be there to take care of him? I'm in the penitentiary and he's gone. And I really believe that God put those thoughts into my heart, into my head, because I turned around and I never went back into the bathroom when I thought he might be drinking. I was afraid of what I'd do. I was the violent one, really, in our home. You know, I didn't act on it. I was one of those family members who threw silence. You know, I threw silence. It was never all that loud when we had discussions. It was more of a quiet fighting in our home. He'd say, Tom would say, I always used to look at you and see if you were talking to me, because if you weren't talking to me, I knew I'd done something really bad the night before. You know, so I used silence to be a punisher, in my family. I learned that from my mom. You know, I really think that the tricks of the trade, the tricks of living with active alcoholism in my home, I got a lot of it from my mother. And my mother did the best she could. My mother was a kind of person who, boy, if I was shut down, my mother was shut down even more. Probably my second memory was being 5 years old on my birthday. And my aunt came over, her sister came over, and she gave me this package. And she said, "This is for you." And I said, "Oh, what is this?" And she said, "It's your birthday present." And my mom turned to my aunt and she said, "Now what have you started?" You see, my birthday hadn't been celebrated. My parents' anniversary was May 16th. I was born November 4th. They always told me that I was very premature. I bought that. I mean, you know, it's like, what do you know? It's like, I think I was in the program already like 5-6 years when I started counting the months. I'm going, wait a minute, what's up? That's not right. I mean, babies didn't survive, you know, but it's like, I bought it. Parents said it, man, I bought it, hook, line, and sinker. So my mother really had to marry my dad, you know? And when my dad found out that my mom was pregnant with me, he said to her, "She's not mine. This kid isn't mine." Because my father couldn't believe that a woman like my mother would marry him. My mother was a high school graduate. She worked for the state. She was very well known in the political arena. She was a district court clerk in Santa Fe, had been for, 20-some years. And my father had an 8th grade education. He went into the Navy when he was 15, and he forged his mother's signature so he could get in. So my dad had a lot of self-esteem problems. He always used to emphasize how I needed to get an education and how important that was. So he just could not believe that my mother could be with him. So he couldn't believe that I was his kid. And when my brother was born, about 5 years later, he said the same thing to her again. Now, I didn't know this. I didn't know any of this until my dad, about 12 years ago, was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And then she told me all this stuff. My mother lived till the day she died with anger towards my father. And my mother ended up with dementia. And at one point, my oldest daughter said, maybe Grandma will forget that she's always angry at Grandpa. You know, it's like, 'cause that's how she was. She just, she didn't want anything to do with this program. She was of that age where, you know, you keep your secrets at home and you don't tell anybody what's going on, and that's certainly what I grew up with. I lived my life on secrets, keeping things deep within me and not telling anyone. I lived my life scared to death, not knowing I was scared. I even kept that from myself. I would walk around with my fist in the air, angry, that quiet, seething anger deep within. And I never knew that what that was hiding was pain and sadness. Not too long ago, I was on the phone with my sponsor, and I was telling her how angry I was. And she said, "You know," she said, "I've had enough of this." I said, what do you mean? She goes, I've had enough of this. You're not angry. I said, I am angry. Don't you hear? I'm angry. And she says, no. She says, you keep going back to that word anger. She says, you're not angry. I said, I am angry. She says, no. She said, stop the story. Stop the story. I said, what are you talking about? What story? This is real. And she says, no, that's the story. She says, you're not angry. What is really going on? Now, I'd known intellectually for years that every time I'm angry, it's hiding sadness and it's hiding fear. Always, always. When she said to me that day, what's underneath the anger? I started to cry. And she says, yeah. She said, you've been in this program too long to call it anger. And she says, I said, oh, Mary Thayer, I said, I am so incredibly sad. The pain I have is so intense. And she says, I know, honey, I know. And it's okay. And I said, I know it's okay. I said, this is deeper than I've ever felt this before. Because it's not the first time. To me, every time I'm at this place, it feels like it's brand new and I've never had this experience before. And it wasn't, but it was in that moment. I lived my life in anger because if I really tell you what I'm really feeling, I have to admit it to myself. The pain that I've kept secret from me since I was teeny tiny, because living with active alcoholism is too big. It's too painful. It's too frightening. I think I have to have the answers. I think I have to have the answers. I think I have to be the one to fix it. To fix it. I got this. I got this. Now, I know you guys don't do that here in the Jersey area, you know. I got this, or think you have to fix it. I got the first step. I'm powerless over alcohol. I get it. I can't make him stop drinking. But you see, by the time I got to Al-Anon, he'd already got into treatment. He'd already stopped drinking. To me, it was a theory. This thing about not drinking, it was a theory. And then I found myself trying to get him the message. Anybody ever do that? You got to get him the message. This is, honey, see this book? It's your book. See what's in here? Those are the steps. The one time I gave him the book and I said, you really ought, you know, he was having a bad day at the treatment center because he was working there. And he said, I really feel like drinking. I said, oh, baby, I said, why don't you call your sponsor? That, he doesn't know anything. I said, why don't you go to a meeting? No point in meetings. They don't work. I said, well, here's your big book. Why don't you read the big book? He got the big book from my hand, threw it across the room and said, and I said, oh, I get it. This is where Al-Anon tells me, and go do something else. So I tried to carry the message to him. It didn't work. It didn't work before, it didn't work after. So I had to work the steps on that. I'm powerless over that. And I began to get what this whole thing with alcoholism is really like. Bless you. And I began to have this feeling and this experience of the depth of powerlessness over alcohol. I don't know about you, but I've gotten to love people in Al-Anon when they come in, and I've gotten to love members of Alcoholics Anonymous when they come into recovery. And you may not know this, but they don't all stay. In fact, it seems like to me the majority don't stay in these rooms. And I come to fall in love with them. Fall in love with you, Ernst. And it breaks my heart when I watch them not come back. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me, this is hard stuff. To examine myself on a regular basis, what am I really up to? Pay attention to how I feel, pay attention to how I'm walking through the world, through people's lives. Am I really doing this stuff, or am I just blah, blah, blah? Because I'll tell you, I can't work with my sponsees and tell them to do something if I'm not doing it. I never wanted an open heart. I just wanted to feel better. I just wanted to not have to hurt inside. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. Well, I have kids. And what happens when these kids grow up is that they do something and they bring other people into your lives. They're called spouses. And I come to love these people. And then they have these other little people come into your life, and they're called grandkids. And this is the disease that keeps on giving. It just keeps on giving. And I've had to take a look at my powerlessness over my kids drinking. I've had to look at my powerlessness over my grandkids using. I've had to look at my powerlessness, it feels even worse, over my kids and my grandkids needing the rooms and the wisdom and the love and the arms of support of Al-Anon, and them not wanting any of it whatsoever. At all. They want nothing to do with this program. At all. And I get a deeper and deeper understanding and a deeper and deeper respect and a deeper experience of that first step of being powerless over alcohol. And the unmanageability that me thinking, if I just get this right, if they call me at just that moment and I say it just so, the right word, I'm going to figure it. And then I bring God into the equation. Oh, they're calling God. I know you wouldn't have them call me if they didn't need my words of wisdom. And not too long ago, one of my kids said, I don't want nothing to do with 12 steps. It's not the first time. It's the first time this one said it. Nothing to do with 12 steps. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, I heard you loud and clear. You know what my sponsor keeps telling me? She said, you just love them. All you have to say is, I love you. And I forget. All they need is mama's, grandma's love. That's all. That's all I can give them. Because I want to give them more. I want to just hold them and I want to say, baby, boy, if you just do what I did, if you just do what I've done, you don't have to feel like this. Because I tell you, in my family, we got those folks, we got those kids, we got those. Man, I got one grandkid. He's been coming into the emergency room for alcohol poisoning since he was 12. He's now 19. I don't have any of the words, nothing that I can do to ease his pain and to ease his mama's pain. And she wants nothing to do with anything having to do with 12 steps. At all. So what do? I love you. I love you, honey. I don't even tell her, I don't tell her anything anymore. Anything. But she knows Mama loves her. And when she's having a hard time, I just say, Hita, I said, I wish I was there to hug you. I wish I was there to hold you. And just know that I love you. You see, I had this idea that Tom gets sober. We're going to walk off into the sunset, and it's all going to be beautiful. It's all going to be roses. It's all going to be, it's like, la, la, la. Life keeps happening. Life doesn't stop. What I have gotten here is a power that rocks my world. This power rocks my world. It holds me in those moments when I am absolutely devastated, when my heart is breaking, when I want to weep from the depths of my soul. And I'm scared because I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went through. They have to. I had to go through absolutely everything I went through to get to where I am today. There are no shortcuts at all. So my job is to show up, have my time with God every morning, because that quickly I can forget about God. I remember asking our Butis O'Neill, an old-time Al-Anon, one of the very first Al-Anons around out of Texas. I was with her one day and I said, Arbutus, she must have had about 41 years at this point, and I said, Arbutus, do you always remember about God? Is your program always working? And she looked at me and she said, some mornings I wake up and I say, God? What God? Program? What program? She says, there's those days that are just hard days. There's those days that are just hard days. You see, when I go to meetings, I make sure to let you know that it's not all roses. Now, that doesn't mean that life isn't good. Life is wonderful. We have an incredible life. We get to be here with you this weekend. We get to travel. We've gone all over the place. We have incredible friends. We have an incredible life. I have so much joy in my life. I should be on my knees every moment, thanking God in gratitude. Because life is good. When those moments come up, when tough times come in, I feel like life is over. And I've been given a God here that carries me through those times. When I want to say I'm angry and my sponsor says, cut the story, what's underneath? Absolute devastation, absolute pain, absolute sadness, and absolute fear. And she says, yeah, honey, call it what it is. Quit using anger to hide from the feelings. Will God carry you through these feelings? Yeah. Yeah. Always has. Always will. Always will. I just forget. And I put God on the shelf. And I don't even know I've put God on the shelf. But there he is. Then all of a sudden I get the reminder, I'm like, oh, come here. Let's do this. You see, I'm not meant to be perfect. God just put me on this earth to be a regular human being. Absolutely fallible. Absolutely, perfectly imperfect. And my very shortcomings, my very character difficulties, my character defects, the very things that cause me pain and are difficult, those are what draw me back to the presence, back to the loving arms of a Creator that holds me safe and protected. I keep coming to these rooms of Al-Anon, and it's my insurance. And you all are my insurance. You give me those hugs, those times when I need you and I need a God with skin on. And you remind me of the true power, the true source. And I wake up in the morning like this morning and God says, trust me. I'm like, really? Really? Yeah, really. Trust God with what? Everything. Everything. I had probably about 5 years in the program. And you know, we know everything we need to know when we get here. We just don't know we know it. It's a reminder. So I had about 5 years in the program, and it was a Saturday morning, and I was in the shower, and I don't even know what was going on, but I found myself weeping in the shower. And I found myself yelling at God, saying, what do you want from me? I've given you everything. I've given you my life. I've given you my will. What more do you want? Nothing came. So I do what I was taught, which was get dressed, go to my meeting. I'm driving to my meeting. I'm about 2 miles away from the meeting, and all of a sudden, bam, it comes to me. And what came to me was this: I want all of you. I love you so much. I want all of you. All of you. Oh, that much? You love me? Several years later, maybe, 10 years later, I was in my bedroom, and Tom came into the room, and I was on the bed weeping. And he said, my God, Juana, what's going on? Is everything okay? Has something happened to the kids? And I said, oh, everything's fine, Tom, everything's fine. I said, but I just got one more time at a deeper place deep within me that God has to have everything. Everything. There is nothing that I can keep from God. I remember Clint Hodges, a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said a question. He asked a question that I go to on a regular basis, and the question was this: what 3 things are you not willing to give up for a better relationship with God? Now, when I first heard this, I thought, nothing. Nothing. Because I want to be that perfect program person. It's like, nothing here. God can have it all. And the truth was, there's a lot of things I wasn't willing to have God take. A lot of things I wasn't willing. I wasn't willing to give up my marriage. I wasn't willing to give up the money. I wasn't willing to give up the job, the security, the home. But I'm not saying those things out loud, because you might think that I'm not a good Al-Anon. You know what I'm saying? So keep it quiet. Keep it locked inside. And the day had to come when I had to admit that there is nothing that I have to hold on so tightly that I'm not willing to give up to this God if I'm going to develop a closer relationship with God. That's the secret. It's like, what's the secret of the 12 steps? One word: God. God. If you weren't here yesterday for Father Tom, he said it, what my sponsor's been saying for years, and I've been saying, it's that gift of desperation, which if you take a look at what that is, it's G-O-D. Who knew that the gift of desperation would lead me to a power that I call God, that carries me through all my difficulties? Who knew? I wanted nothing to do with that. And it's the biggest gift that I've been graced with. Biggest gift I've been graced with. And yet today, I can still put that God on the shelf and not know it. Ernst, I wish you a God that is so unbelievably great, that loves you so much. This God will hold you in tenderness, in love, safe and protected. Stay with us, honey. Stay in the rooms here where you're surrounded by this incredible power. We're all just human beings, aren't we? But collectively, when we access this power, amazing things can come to pass. Amazing things can come to pass. Stay. If you're alcoholic, stay. If you're a family member, stay. If you haven't found the gift, that need, that desire, that want to be here, that desire for the power, the need, the knowing of that power, ask to be shown. Ask to receive it. It'll be the greatest gift you will ever receive. I'm so grateful to be here with you this weekend. Those of you who are new to this, what an experience, what a treat. Stay close, stay in the middle, because the disease will take those that are on the fringes. And I don't care if you're alcoholic or you're a family member, stay close. Reach out, hold hands, be willing to take the risk that I fought for years, which is to open your heart and let the love in. Because that's what this is all about. We can talk it, we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we don't feel the love coming in and going out, we've done nothing. We've done nothing. And we will fail each other. Thank you for having me. God bless.